From the Ear to There Travel Studio, this is the Ear to There Disney Podcast.
The Ear to There Podcast, it's time to start the show. Be sure to hold on tight, here we go. Exploring all the different Disney destinations. Ear to There, it's time to start the fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ear to There Disney Podcast. I am your host, Phil Gramlich. I am also the owner and the founder of Ear to There Travel, which is, of course, a Disney specialized travel agency. Now, if you've listened to the show before, you probably know the spiel, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is my job, along with all of the vacationeers on the Ear to There Travel team, to take away all that stress, all that anxiety, and all that time that it takes to plan a Disney trip. And now more than ever, it takes a long time to plan and coordinate one of these things. And we do all of that because we want you to relax and have a great time with your family and friends. And we also want you to enjoy all of the magic. You can listen to this podcast, meet all of the vacationeers on the Ear to There Travel team, and request your free, no obligation quote over at eartotheretravel.com. All right, this is episode number 199 for the week of May 11th, 2020. Yes, it's only 2020 still. We've been seeing a lot of our families lately, and we're only 5.5 months in to this year. Anyway, onward and upward. It's going to get better from here, right? So it's time to grab a drink, grab a snack, and as a famous mouse once said, on with the show. Ever since the Disney theme parks were built, starting with Disneyland, which opened in 1955, there have been rumors and stories of all kinds of secrets about the parks. This episode is going to give you a rundown or a summary of a lot of those secrets that you may have heard. Some of them are true, some of them aren't. But I thought this would be a fun time to just go through the history of all of these secrets of the Disney parks and kind of clarify exactly what they were. Funnily enough, I looked through my archives of the episodes that I've done, and I don't really have a secrets episode. I have rumors, I have stories, I have, different opinions and things like that, but there's no secrets episode. So this is all about the secrets of the Disney theme parks. And I'm going to go through them one by one. There's a lot on a list, so there's a lot to talk about. Hey, listen, we all got lots of time these days, right? I cracked myself up. All right, so let's get into some of these secrets. The first one I wanted to talk about is a rumor and a secret, and it's that, and this one goes back to Disneyland, and it's that Walt's apartment over the Firehouse is haunted by the ghost of Walt Disney. Now, you may have heard this story before where Walt Disney had just passed away, and a custodial cast member was up in the apartment cleaning it. And there's a famous lamp that was in the front window of the Firehouse that used to tell the cast members if Walt was there. If the lamp was on, that meant the boss was in the house and he was awake. If it was off, it meant that he wasn't there or he was asleep. So according to legend, there was a custodial cast member that was cleaning the apartment after Walt had passed away. And we're going to say it's a her because that's what I've heard for the story. But she apparently turned the lamp off and then went back down to Main Street. As she looked up into the window, the lamp was back on. So she just thought, oh man, I must have left it on. She went back up, turned it off, went back out onto Main Street again, and it was on again. So that's the rumor. That's the story that Walt Disney haunts that apartment. And that's the reason why the lamp is left on. Now, what I heard from the tour guide when we had our tour of Walt's apartment a couple years ago was that the decision was made after Walt had passed away to leave the lamp on to show cast members and guests that Walt's spirit was always in the park. So believe what you want, I'm not quite sure that Walt's ghost does haunt that apartment, but I will tell you what, when you're in there, you really, really get it's a feeling, man. It's like a feeling that I don't know. I don't know if it's a ghostly feeling, but it's definitely a feeling. You feel a presence. You feel someone's presence there. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not a ghost, enthusiast, but you can definitely feel someone's presence in that apartment. And if it's not Walt's, I don't know whose it would be. So, all right, that's the first one. Let's move on. And let me just say, if you get a chance to visit Walt's apartment, whether it's on the Walk in Walt's Footsteps tour or if it's something else, you really should take that opportunity, take that chance, and go see it. It's an incredible, it's almost a religious experience. It's very, very cool. All right, now let's talk about one of the least well-kept secrets, one of the worst-kept secrets in the history of Disneyland Park, and that is Club 33. Now, I know a few years ago, Club 33 was expanded and it took over the spot where the Disney Gallery used to be or where the Dream Suite was in New Orleans Square. And now, of course, we have Club 33 locations in Walt Disney World in Florida. But I'm going to talk about the original Club 33. So if you listen to the Red Wagon Inn or Plaza Inn episode I did a while back, you heard me talk about how the Plaza Inn was really when it was a Red Wagon Inn, was Walt Disney's first location where he entertained guests and dignitaries in Disneyland. Well, he wanted a better place. He wanted a more private, secret place. So that's when they decided, when New Orleans Square was going to open, that a private club for Walt and his friends and celebrities and visiting politicians and whatnot, they would all get a chance to go. So Club 33 was designed, and a lot of it was Walt Disney's input. Unfortunately, Walt never got to experience it. But it was there in New Orleans Square. You could walk through and see the 33, the address there on the building for Club 33. There are a lot of people who say the name of Club 33 had to do with Walt becoming a Mason. That's never been proven. The rumor is that, or the story is, according to Disney, that Club 33 was simply the address of the door on the street in New Orleans Square. But Club 33 is still there today, even though the entrance is different and the location is slightly different. It was for a while the only place, well, for decades, the only place where you could buy alcohol in the park. And that's no longer true because you can now buy alcohol at the cantina in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. That's not a secret. That's out there. All right, let's move on to another one that goes back to Walt Disney and Disneyland, and that is the Disney Point. Have you heard of the Disney Point? If you are a cast member or a former cast member, you have definitely heard of this. And I know a lot of guests and people who read about the parks and have an interest in the parks know about the Disney Point as well. Now, when I was a cast member, I was taught, this is what you're taught as a cast member, and it is true that pointing with one finger is disrespectful in many cultures around the world. So as cast members, you're taught to either point with two fingers, and I'm doing it right now in front of my computer and my microphone. Even though you can't see it, just know that I do it. So you're supposed to point with two fingers or an open hand, an open palm. That is the way cast members are taught to point. You're prohibited from pointing with one finger. So again, the official story is because it's disrespectful. Now, if you go back and look at a lot of pictures of Walt Disney from the early days of the park or the construction of the park, he's always pointing with two fingers. Now, some would say that's because he knew at that time that that was disrespectful, but that might not be true. The secret is that the Disney company has airbrushed a cigarette out of a ton of pictures of Walt. Walt had a pretty nasty smoking habit, and obviously Disney wants to portray Walt in the best way possible. So if you see pictures of Walt pointing with two fingers, he might have had a cigarette in between those two fingers, and Disney artists and photography experts went in and airbrushed all those out. There's a famous picture right inside the entrance to Steakhouse 55 at the Disneyland Hotel. And it's pretty obvious. Walt's walking out of a building. You can see he has his hat on, his coat on. And it looks like he's pointing at the ground with two fingers, but there's no cigarette in his hand. Of course, there was once, before that photo was retouched, a cigarette in Walt's hand. All right, let's talk about another Disneyland one. And there's always been secrets and rumors that there are feral cats all over Disneyland. Not just stray cats or homeless cats, but feral cats, ones that really want nothing to do with human beings. And that's true. If you walk around Disneyland at night, sometimes even during the day, you're going to catch glimpses of feral cats around the parks. As a matter of fact, when I was there a couple of months ago, I saw some guests trying to pet one of the cats. That's a bad idea. The cast members told them so. They're not for petting. These cats are wild. They're not just homeless cats that showed up at Disneyland one day. The rumor is about 200 of these cats, and Disney even feeds them in different spots backstage. Now, they don't release them. They're not in cages or crates throughout the day, and then at night they're released to hunt down the mouse or rat population. No, they're always there. They're always wandering. They're always backstage. They're always on stage, but they're always, always there. Nowadays, when you go to Disneyland, you'll even see a sign or two around the parks that tell you not to bother the feral cats. So yes, if you've heard the rumor, if you've heard the secret, yes, there are cats all over Disneyland. Now, this one I tackled on the rumors, the untrue rumors episode, but I keep seeing it on blogs and on vlogs and on YouTube and everywhere. So the rumor is that when Walt Disney was very ill with cancer, that he decided that at his death or upon his death, he would have his body frozen in ice, or even just his head frozen in ice, so that in the future, when technology would allow it, and when we had a cure for cancer, we could bring Walt back and he would have 30 or 40 more years of life to run the Disney company and run the parks. Well, that's not true at all. I know that for some reason, people still believe that this is true. This secret is not. When Walt Disney passed away, he was cremated and his body was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. Last year, when I was out in California with some friends, we actually visited Walt's grave site. Talk about a somber moment what that was. I never got to see Walt alive or even see him live on television. He passed away more than a decade before I was born. But I got to stand in a little garden where he's buried with his wife and his daughter and kind of reflect for a couple of minutes. It's a pretty insane experience. I talked about this on, I think like a blog post or something, but my friends left a little garden that we were standing in where Walt's remains are interred. And I kind of hung back a little bit and stood there and just reflected for a minute by myself. And then as I was walking out and closing the gate, I looked over my shoulder and I said, "See you, Walt." It was just a pretty powerful moment for me to go visit the grave of someone who had so much influence on me and my life. And it was, all right. Anyway, before I get choked up, let's move on. How about this one? This is a Walt Disney World and Disneyland secret or story. And it's that guests would bring, speaking of cremations, would bring the remains of their cremated loved ones in an urn or a bag or something and try to leave them behind inside the Haunted Mansion. I guess they figure there's dust all over the Haunted Mansion. Disney brings in all this dust. They'll never notice if I kind of, scatter a loved one's ashes on that attraction because, hey, it was their favorite attraction. Guess what? Disney has cameras, and this has actually happened. This is a true thing. This secret I've heard a lot and read a lot online, and it does and has happened. And Disney has cameras all over both the Disneyland and the Walt Disney World Haunted Mansion. They have eyes on the guests on the attraction at all times for safety reasons, of course. And if they catch you, which they will, dumping or scattering a loved one's ashes on that attraction, they will shut the attraction down. You will be walked off, maybe removed from the park, or maybe banned or trespassed from the park. And your loved one will be vacuumed up by somebody wearing a hazmat suit and thrown in the trash. So do yourself a favor. That's not something you should do. Literally, they will vacuum the ashes up and throw them in a bag into the trash. So don't do that. All right. I know people have, and it never works out well. So don't do it. All right. Now, thousands of guests ride the Disneyland Railroad each day. And over the years since the grand opening of Disneyland in 1955, the engines and the railroad cars have all been refurbished, and all but one of the railroad cars has been replaced. So yeah, there's still one original 1955 railroad car still in use in Disneyland. This car was originally named the Grand Canyon Viewing Car, But in 1976, it was converted to be a VIP experience in Disneyland Park. It was renamed the Lily Bell after Walt Disney's wife, Lillian, and was designed mostly by Lillian Disney herself. It's decorated in a Victorian style, much like the apartment above the Firehouse, which Lillian and Emil Curry designed. Emil Curry was the designer of the sets on Mary Poppins, among other Disney films, and he used Lillian's input to design that apartment. Now, the Lily Bell is decorated with family photos from the Disney family. Some are even originals, and it's also decorated with some of the Disney family's belongings as well. Another secret is that you can actually ride the Lily Bell. There is a VIP tour that you could take where you would get that experience. There's also a way that you could do it. If you show up at park opening, go straight to the Main Street Railroad station, you could ask one of the railroad cast members if you could ride. There's only room in the car for about 14 people, but they do on select days let guests ride early in the morning for free. So next time you're in Disneyland, give it a shot. Go get there before the park opens. As soon as it opens, don't run to the Matterhorn or Galaxy's Edge. Head straight to the railroad and ask if you can ride in the Lily Bell. All right, so we're going to do another Disneyland secret here. I promise, as I'm going through my list, I'm realizing that I did a lot more Disneyland than I had realized, but listen, there's nothing I can do about that. Disneyland is my favorite individual park, so here we are. All right, sorry, I laugh at myself. You know that if you listen to the show. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a couple of secrets about the King Arthur Carousel in Fantasyland. So did you know that the carousel goes back not to 1955, but to 1922? It was built in 1922 and operated at Sunnyside Beach Park in Toronto, Canada, until that park closed. Disney bought the carousel and moved it to Disneyland in 1954. The company Arrow Development, who worked very closely with Disneyland in the early years, refurbished and modified the carousel, and it opened with the park on July 17th, 1955. Also, did you know that all of the horses on the carousel are jumpers? That was because Walt wanted them all to be jumpers because he had the memory of his daughters riding the jumper horses on the Griffith Park carousel, which of course inspired his idea for Disneyland. The other modification that Walt made was all of the horses were painted white. That's because only the heroes have white horses. So everyone who rides a horse on the carousel in Disneyland is a hero. Now, the lead horse on the carousel, her name is Jingles, and she was Walt Disney's favorite because of the straps of jingle bells that hang down from her saddle. Now, on April 8th, 2008, Julie Andrews was named Honorary Ambassador of Disneyland. And with that, she was gifted a newly painted, newly refurbished Jingles. Jingles received a new paint scheme, including 18-karat gold leaf, a talking parrot, I can't speak, a talking parrot-handled umbrella from the movie Mary Poppins, a monogram J.A. for Julie Andrews, a robin perched on the high button shoes, and the silhouette of Mary Poppins in flight, along with the number 50 representing the 50 magical years of this attraction in Disneyland. How about that? All right, so another secret in both Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and I'm going to talk specifically about Magic Kingdom and Disneyland Park here, and the secret is the number of official American flags in those two parks, or in each park. Did you know that there's only one official, authentic American flag in each park? Now you're saying, no. I've walked down Main Street USA in both parks. I've seen flags on every building. There are flagpoles and American flags on top of the Emporium, on the clothier shop, on the magic shop in Disneyland. They're everywhere. Well, yeah, there are flags, but they are not official American flags. They sure do look like them, but each one is missing something. They're either missing a stripe, they're missing a star or two. That way they are not official American flags, and the park does not have to lower them at sundown and then put them back up when the sun goes up the next morning. Of course, the only two official flags in Disneyland and Walt Disney World are raised and lowered each day. Another cool thing about the flags on the buildings are they are actually lightning rods to keep the lightning away from guests and attractions that are in the park. All right, now I'm going to tell you another one that has its roots and goes back to Walt Disney, the man himself. Now, when Walt was designing Disneyland, he had a pretty cool idea. One night he was, so the story goes. I can't confirm this, but it's one of the secrets of Disneyland, so here we go. One night when he was having dinner with his family, he went into the refrigerator and took out a hot dog, or as Walt called it, a weenie. Yes, apparently Walt called hot dogs weenies. Listen, it was the 50s. So he took the weenie out, the hot dog out, and he waved it in front of his dog's face. Listen, I have a dog. I have a 1.5-year-old dog. If I wave a hot dog in front of his face, he's probably going to try to snag it. But Walt's dog didn't. What his dog did do was follow the weenie, follow the hot dog with his eyes, and didn't take his eyes off of that weenie. So Walt decided, and again, according to the story, Walt decided that he needed weenies to draw people in to his park. That's what Sleeping Beauty Castle became, right? This big landmark, this big thing that guests can't take their eyes off of, and it draws them deeper into the park. So think about all the weenies now that are all over the parks. Spaceship Earth, the Tower of Terror, Expedition Everest, the Floating Mountains of Pandora. They all kind of beckon you and invite you to go deeper into the story, to go deeper into the park. That's what a weenie was, and that's what Walt figured out, according to legend, the one night with his family and the family dog. Now, I think I've talked about this next one, but this is another one for both Disneyland and Magic Kingdom. And this one also has its history in the designs of Walt Disney himself. So have you ever noticed when you're walking down Main Street on either coast, when the horse-drawn carriage goes by you, or the horse-drawn cart, the clip-clopping of the horses are a little loud. Actually, they're very loud, and they're much louder than they would be if it was just regular horseshoes on the horses. Did you know that those horseshoes are coated in polyurethane, which actually makes the clip-clopping sounds louder? How cool is that? Every single little detail that you hear, that you see, that you smell, that you feel is all or was all designed by Disney Imagineers. How about this one? In Walt Disney World and Disneyland, you may notice that things kind of blend in, right? Huge buildings, secret doors, electrical boxes, lampposts, poles. You almost don't notice them. Why is that? Why don't you notice these things that if you were walking down a real city street instead of Main Street USA, you would see? Well, that's because they're painted in a secret shade of green called Go Away Green. And this shade of green was designed to not draw your eye to it, but actually to draw your eye away from it. So next time you're in the parks, which may be a while, but hopefully it's sooner rather than later, look for things that are painted green in the background or even in the foreground. You'll start to notice it, and then you won't be able to stop noticing it. You'll be a crazy person like me, where you're always trying to figure out what Disney doesn't want you to see. Now, this one you've probably heard before, but when you're walking down Main Street USA, or you're riding Spaceship Earth or Soarin' or Flight of Passage, it's not just what you see and what you hear and what you feel, but also what you smell. So when you're walking down Main Street USA, you may smell fresh cookies being baked. Or if you're walking down the same street at Christmas, you may smell fresh candy canes being made in the confectionery. Well, guess what? These smells are actually kind of pushed or pumped out into the street. And on the attractions, they have the same machines. And in the resorts, the hotel lobbies, they have the same machines that kind of pump these smells out. These machines are called smellitzers. And yeah, so if you think you were smelling that fresh coffee from Starbucks on Main Street or from the Main Street Bakery, or you know you're smelling those cookies or those candy canes, you're probably not really. You're probably smelling a scent that Disney pumps into the air to make you want a cup of Starbucks or make you want a chocolate chip cookie or help you smell the water on Avatar Flight of Passage or Soarin'. Yes, like I said before, everything is designed to be a fully, completely immersive sensory experience. All right, so the smells aren't always real smells, but did you know that some of the screams that you hear in the parks aren't real screams. Well, they are real screams. I mean, somebody screamed, but they're not happening in real time. So think of this. When you get to Disney's Hollywood Studios and you turn off of Hollywood Boulevard onto Sunset Boulevard and you see the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror in the distance, as you start getting closer, you will hear people screaming at the top of their lungs, mostly because they're dropping 13 stories into their doom. But did you know that some of those screams that you're hearing aren't really guest screams? Disney actually has hidden speakers around the Tower of Terror, and some of what you're hearing are pre-recorded screams to amp up the level of excitement and dread that you might be feeling when walking toward that attraction. So yeah, some of the screams are real, but some of them are not. All right, here's another one from my days as a cast member. As a cast member, and I don't think I'm blowing anybody away with this information, but, and by the way, don't tell Disney I said any of this. Don't tell them I gave away the secrets. So as a cast member, you are taught, you are trained to never, ever say the phrase, "I don't know," to a guest. Instead, you were taught to say, "Let me find out for you," or "I will find out for you." And this happened to be a lot when I was a cast member at Animal Kingdom in the early days in 1998. I would have guests come up to me and say, "Is Countdown to Extinction running right now?" Of course, Countdown to Extinction eventually became Dinosaur. So early on in that park, Dinosaur or Countdown to Extinction didn't run super, super well. So I would always have to tell a guest, "I will find out for you." Get on the radio, call someone in the park operations and find out if Dinosaur was up and running that day or in that moment. And the cast member on the other end would either tell me the attraction Dinosaur or Countdown to Extinction was 102, which meant the attraction was up and running, or it was 101, which meant the attraction was currently down. Of course, you don't tell the guests that. You just say, "Yes, it is running," or "I'm sorry, no, it's not running." All right, how about this one? A lot of you already know that you are able to get your hair cut in Magic Kingdom. You can go to the Harmony Barbershop on Main Street, USA, and get all kinds of different hairstyles. They will do kids, they will do men, they will do women. They specialize in babies' first haircuts. But did you know there's a second barbershop located in Magic Kingdom? Actually, this one is not open to guests, and it's actually in the Utilidors. It's called Kingdom Cutters, with a K, of course, Kutters. And it's where cast members can get their hair cut before, after a shift, or even on their days off. There's also a hair salon at Epcot in the cast services building. And really the reason I'm mentioning this one is because I love the name so much. It's for cast members only, and it's called Epcot Hairport International. Come on, that's a great name, right? Believe it or not, I did have my hair cut when I worked for Disney in the hair salons. I also got a haircut on Main Street, USA. Of course, this is going way back to when I could actually grow hair. Not that I can't now, but it's not very impressive. Let's just say that. Now, here's another one that has its roots way back before Disneyland and gets back to Walt Disney as well. So when Walt was planning Disneyland, he would go to other theme parks, other amusement parks. Amusement parks, not theme parks. Theme parks were invented by Walt and the Disney company. So he would go to other amusement parks and do his research. See, when he first told Lillian, his wife, that he was going to build a park, she said, "Oh, Walt, why do you want to do that? Those places are dirty." And Walt said, "That's just it. Mine won't be." So Walt wanted to figure out how to keep the parks clean. So he would go to other amusement parks and he followed guests around, I think in a non-threatening, not creepy kind of way. And he would watch them and see how long they would carry a piece of garbage before they just threw it on the ground. And his research told him time and time again that it was about 30 feet. So these guests would carry their trash for about 30 feet before they looked around and were like, no trash can, and just dropped it on the ground. So that's why it was decided that Disneyland trash cans would be placed every 30 feet. So when you're in any of the Disneyland or Walt Disney World parks, you will never be more than 30 feet away from the nearest trash can. But somehow people still throw their trash on the ground. I see it all the time. All right, former cast member, just, They tell you when you're trained as a cast member, every cast member is a custodial cast member. You're taught to keep your area clean. It's funny, I haven't worked for the company for well over a decade, but when I'm walking through the parks, I will still bend over and pick up a guide mat or a cup or something and throw it in the closest trash can. It just, some habits can't be broken. That's one of them. All right, I have a few more. This one is from Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now, I mentioned the attraction Dinosaur before, but did you know that Dinoland USA was once sponsored by McDonald's? You could actually get McDonald's food inside the land back in the day. So when you go into the load area for the attraction Dinosaur, of course, formerly Countdown to Extinction, if you look overhead along the ceiling and along some of the walls, you will see red, yellow, and white pipes. On these red, yellow, and white pipes, you can read a chemical compound or a scientific compound that I don't really understand. Did you know that the red, the yellow, and the white represent ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise? That's true. Since the attraction was originally sponsored by McDonald's, they put a little fun color in there in the pipes, and the chemical compounds on the outside of the pipes, they are actually the written out scientific forms or scientific names for ketchup, mustard, and mayonnaise. That's a fun one. All right, how about this one? Disney's Tower of Terror, or the Hollywood Tower Hotel, has a lobby where everything all of a sudden one night in Hollywood, 1939. Actually, on Halloween night, the tower was struck by lightning, according to the story, and all life inside of it abruptly stopped. When you walk into the lobby, you'll see a Mahjong board sitting on a table. I don't know how to play Mahjong, but Disney invited a couple of world-class Mahjong players, told them to sit down and start playing. Then, as the story goes, a few hours into their game, one of the Imagineers said, stop playing, that's it. They glued all the tiles down, and it has been the same ever since. And it shows, according to the story, that there were a couple of Mahjong players in the lobby on Halloween night in 1939. The tower was struck by lightning, and all of a sudden, life ended, and the game is still the same. If it were me and I was a championship Mahjong player, I would be really upset that I didn't get to finish that game. That would still drive me crazy to this day. All right, this is going to be my last secret of the episode. And this is more of a tip than a secret, but I like it because it involves Casey's Corner. And as you already know, Casey's Corner is one of my all-time favorite places to eat in all of Walt Disney World. So did you know that if you get to Casey's before it opens, that the cast members, it will first open the door and they will select a child who's standing nearby to throw out the first pitch of the day. So a lot like the start of a baseball game where a kid or an adult throws out the ceremonial first pitch, they choose a kid that's standing nearby. He throws a soft, like foam baseball to a cast member in a glove. And then once the first pitch is done, everyone who's standing around getting ready to go into Casey's gets to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." It's really cool and really fun. There's lots of magic moments all around Walt Disney World like this one. But this is one that on your next trip to Magic Kingdom, you should look out for. Get to Casey's before 11 so your son or daughter can throw out the first pitch. All right, I said that was the last one. I'm going to do one more because I'm a sucker for Disneyland and Walt Disney. I'm going to end it on a secret that you might not know about Disneyland's address. So Walt Disney actually got to choose the address for Disneyland. Disneyland Drive was put in, and since there was nothing yet on Disneyland Drive, Walt got to make up the address for his park. So Walt went with 1313 Disneyland Drive, and that is still the official address for Disneyland. So why did he go with 1313? Because 13 is an unlucky number? Well, this was never confirmed, but there's two reasons why experts think he picked 1313. One reason was kind of to rib the critics who said that his Disneyland park would never work. So the rumor is he picked 1313 as an ironic address because so many people told him it wouldn't work, but he knew it would. So he intentionally chose an unlucky number for the address of his park. The other idea is what the 13th letter of the alphabet is. The 13th letter of the alphabet, of course, is M. So the other theory is that the 1313 stands for MM, or Mickey Mouse. That would make his address for his park 1313 Disneyland Drive, or Mickey Mouse Disneyland Drive. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Ear to There Disney podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a fun one. Like I said, don't tell Disney about it. No, I'm only kidding. You can say whatever you want. I just don't want Disney knocking on my door and saying, you spilled all our secrets, but I think it'll be fine. Listen, if you did enjoy this episode, please do me a favor and share it with someone. We're all home. We're not doing a whole lot. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a cousin, tell your spouse, tell your dog. Listen, this is a fun show, and I want you to listen to it, so I really appreciate that. Thanks so much in advance for sharing it. Look for a new episode of the podcast next week. I'm working my hardest to try to get a couple, 3, 4, 5 episodes out a week. I've mentioned it's tough. It's tougher than I thought to get episodes done when the whole family is home, but I'm working on it. Just know that. And I hope you enjoyed this show. I hope you enjoy every show. Thanks again so much for listening. Until next time, have an amazing week. Stay safe. Enjoy the time with your family. Bye-bye.
Ear to there, ear to